you seen over the past week? I mean, I've seen some of your incredible shots on your Twitter feed. Can you talk us through what it's like actually being there?
Yeah, in San Diego, at least, it's been pretty remarkable just how many people have been protesting in the entire region, all across Southern California. So San Diego is a big city of over 1 million people, but even smaller cities nearby have seen their own protests. Last night was the largest protest since the weekend, over 2,000 people marching in the streets. Completely peaceful, no arrests. There was no rioting or looting that happened afterward. There were no opportunists that took that occasion to take advantage of it. So it's maybe morphing into something else. It's definitely becoming sustained. And as we head into the weekend, where a bunch of more protests are planned, it's going to be interesting to see what will happen to these protests and if they're able to affect the change that they're seeking.
Absolutely, and we'll get to that shortly. We're just seeing some live vision there in Washington with some people dancing, lots of signs up. But there's also, Max, a lot of people really not adhering to social distancing rules, a lot of people not wearing masks. What is the situation? Because we know of the high levels across the US. What are the concerns? Because, for example, here in Australia, we've got a number of protests which are going to occur across the country. The health and the government authorities advising people not to attend or at least adhere to social distancing rules. We're going to see a huge spike, though, don't you think?
Yeah, it's very possible. Right now we're seeing a bit of a spike because 2 weeks ago we had the Memorial Day holiday. So there's been a bit of a spike since then. Those people held cookouts. Large states like California and New York State have begun to loosen their restrictions. While their overall numbers are down, they're really looking at whether the health system could actually, serve as many people as it needs to who come down with the infection. It's not saying that the actual numbers on the whole have completely dropped. It's the amount of people who are in intensive care. So the COVID-19 is not really contained in the United States. The numbers continue to go down, but as you loosen restrictions, you need to take a look at whether those numbers tick back up, and especially things like protests where people are not social distancing by virtue of, either protesting near one another or being arrested, being put into jails or confinement that we know that they can't social distance within. These numbers will probably tick back up. It's just a question of how much. And there's just so much we don't know about the coronavirus, whether it's been impacted by the weather, whether there's a different strain on the East Coast than the West Coast. So really a lot of question marks, and America is going forward with this experiment of opening up without really knowing too much, just like other parts of the world.
Yeah, you make some great points there. And as you said, we don't know too much about coronavirus, nor do we have a vaccine. Now, this week, Reverend Al Sharpton, he announced on Thursday, in fact, that he is organising a march in Washington in late August, which is only a couple of months away, to mark the 57th anniversary of the historic demonstration for civil rights as the protests over the death of George Floyd sweep across the nation. Now, I believe there was around 200,000 people that marched at that event 57 years ago. What is it going to look like, do you think, in Washington in late August?
Right. So, we have our political conventions are right now scheduled for July and August, and they're looking at alternatives for that right now to avoid a large gathering. Whether there could be a safe large gathering in August remains to be seen. How do you get as many people who might show up to properly socially distance? We're going to find out. I think right now there is such an appetite for change. There is such a momentum for change for people and for creating, actual sustainable systemic change in police departments and looking at the way we allocate resources in the United States, that people are going to show up. People really do want to see something affect this change. And of course, this cuts between political parties, right? We know that there's a presidential election in November, but both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, right now in the United States are very reticent to change of police departments. So it's gonna be interesting to see what actual reforms are coming down. And right now there have been some proposals like ending controversial chokeholds and around use of force, but nothing really kind of paradigm shifting. So it'll be interesting to see between now and August what those demands become and what's really politically on the table.
Yes, very interesting indeed. And the US president has certainly sparked outrage in a recent speech claiming victory about the economy, suggesting it has been a, quote, great day for George Floyd. What has been the reaction there?
I mean, people here are reacting to the death of a guy in police custody, of a gentleman in police custody. They're kind of attuned to the fact that Trump is laser focused on the economy. He's always been. This is why he got swept into office, was to focus on the economy. So it's all going to go back to that for him. And I think protesters are a bit divorced from what Trump is saying, just in terms of, it has no relation to them, because many of them are not feeling any of the benefits of kind of an economy that's reopening. A lot of people, especially low-income people from Black and Latino communities, have been laid off during the pandemic, and remain unemployed. So I think there's a bit of a divide between the economy as Trump sees it and as the people here on the ground see it. So I don't think it impacts the protests that much, just because these people are operating on such different levels.
Absolutely. Well, we've certainly got a long couple of months ahead, as we mentioned, with the election coming up. We've got the march in late August, and obviously some really serious situations continuing with the potential spikes again with COVID-19. And yes, very, very testing times. Before we go, how have you been in terms of your health?
I'm good. I'm trying to socially distance as I cover things. I'm eating oranges and drinking vitamin C as much as I can, and trying to keep my immune system functional. But obviously, for reporters right now, we've got a story to tell. It's not always possible to adhere to strict safety guidelines. So we're doing the best we can, but these stories do have to be told.
Absolutely. Well, we've had a few reporters in Australia who have been attacked this week. Do you feel safe when you are reporting? Because obviously, seeing all of the vision, it is frightening out there.
These are confusing situations, right? You don't know who is an actor in these situations. It could be somebody from the left, from the right, who's trying to raise tensions. Police are trying to maintain control of situations that are constantly fluid. So the best safety that you could follow is basically figuring out where you could be, that you could tell the story, but that is a safe distance. And obviously, as the Australian journalists found out, that's not always easy. And identifying yourself as press doesn't always necessarily guarantee your safety. Again, these are very stressful and difficult situations. The human mind, the human brain makes very narrow decisions when it's stressed. So you need to keep that in mind, even if you have a ton of training as a journalist or as a police officer. Difficult times, people make irrational decisions.